Hi and welcome back to the AQA GCSE History Britain Health and the People revision series. This is episode 15 and we're looking at the impact of the World Wars. The First World War caused devastation in Europe, but the soldiers' injuries gave surgeons opportunities to find new techniques for diagnosis and for carrying out more complex operations. Wilhelm Röntgen discovered Xrays in 1895. Xrays pass easily through soft flesh but less well through bone. X-ray images could therefore be produced by directing X-rays at a body part in front of a photographic plate. X-rays were used at the start of the World War to find broken bones, but equipment including glass tubes that were unreliable and often stopped working. Also, it was often located in hospitals miles away from a battlefield. The American scientist William Coolidge had invented a more reliable X-ray tube in 1913. The Coolidge tube became widely used towards the end of the war and is still used today. In 1914, the Polish scientist Marie Curie developed a mobile X-ray unit which allowed doctors to transport X-ray equipment. The problem of blood loss was overcome as a result of the war. The idea of a blood transfusion was known from the 17th century, but they were rarely successful because the blood of the recipient often clotted. Blood also clotted if it was stored outside the body. In 1901, Karl Leinster discovered blood groups. Certain blood groups couldn't be mixed as the blood would clot, blocking the blood vessels. Leinster's discovery meant that doctors could perform successful blood transfusions if the donors' groups was the same as the patient's. During World War I, the seriousness of wounds from gunshots and explosive shells meant that many soldiers died from blood loss. This made being able to store blood very important. In 1914, doctors found that sodium citrate stopped blood clotting and how it could be stored. In 1917, this discovery allowed the first ever blood depot to be set up in the Battle of Cambrai. In 1946, the National British Blood Transfusion Service was established. War also sped up the development of plastic surgery. Doctors in France and Germany had been working on skin graft techniques since before the First World War. Their work helped pave the way for Harold Gillies, who set up a plastic surgery unit for the British Army during the war. Gillies was interested in reconstructing facial injuries so that patients could have a normal appearance. He developed the use of a pedicle tube, which kept detailed records of his achievements. A pedicle tube is a skin graft technique where skin is partially cut away from a healthy part of the patient's body, grown and then reattached to the damaged area so that the patient can cover any scarring. Gillies' work was continued during the Second World War by his assistant, Archibald MacLeod. A lot of MacLeod's patients were pilots who had been trapped inside burning aircrafts. After World War II, housing standards began to improve. The Beveridge Report argued that the state should provide support for everyone, resulting in the creation of the welfare state and the NHS. The World Wars created pressure for social change. World War I and World War II broke down social distinctions and brought people together whose lives had been very separate. Raising mass armies made government and military officials more aware of the health issues that the poor faced. Powerful people were more concerned with solving the issues of war because it directly affected their army. The evacuation of children during World War II increased the awareness in richer rural areas. In 1945, after World War II, Labour came into power. They promised healthcare for everyone. Housing and health improved after the Second War too. Towards the end of World War I, the Prime Minister David Lloyd George promised to tackle poor quality housing by building homes fit for heroes to tackle bad housing. Some new council homes were built in the 1920s and 1930s, but many of them were too expensive for the poorest of families who still lived in slums. During World War II, destruction from the Blitz and a lack of construction led to severe housing shortages, making the situation even worse. After the war, the Labour government built 800,000 homes between 1945 and 1951. In 1946, it passed the New Towns Act. This created completely new towns near major cities. Governments in the 1950s and 1960s demolished over 900,000 old, cramped slums. Around 2 million inhabitants were rehoused. In 1961, a report called Homes for Today and Tomorrow gave specific standards for new housing, including adequate heating, a flushing toilet, and enough space inside and outside. This was the final step in tackling the major public health issues. The Beveridge Report led to the welfare state. In 1942, during World War II, economist and social reformer William Beveridge published his famous report, the Beveridge Report. Beveridge said that the government had a duty to care for all its citizens, not just the poor or unemployed. To achieve this, Beveridge suggested the creation of a welfare state, a system of grants and services available to all British citizens. In 1945, Labour government was elected with the promise to implement Beveridge's proposal. One of their first acts was to pass the new National Insurance Act in 1946 to support anyone who couldn't work due to sickness, pregnancy, unemployment, or old age. So that's the end of episode 15 of the AQA GCSE History Britain Health and the People revision series. Next episode we'll be looking at penicillin. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed.